Hey guys, I still haven't really figured out this booktube intro thing, but it's Elise. What's up? It's Elise, and today I'm going to recommend you 3 really dark, really emotional contemporary books that I love and would die for. I feel like often when I read books I really like, I don't talk about them again other than maybe boosting my Goodreads reviews, and I feel really bad about that because I'll often read these books that just change me as a person and then I never talk about them again, and it's just really sad and I want to fix that. The first one is Bad Romance by Heather Demetrios. This is a book with a gorgeous cover about a girl who is in an abusive relationship. The narrator is named Grace, and she's in a bad home situation, and when she meets this guy named Gavin, who's kind of hot, and yeah, he had some problems, but she feels like maybe she can fix him. So this is a book about an abusive relationship. And I think when we get books about abusive relationships, they are almost always physically abusive relationships. Relationships where there's a very obvious element of he's hitting her, he's punching her, he's beating her up. And in this book, that's not an element. There are a couple of moments where it's implied that he's getting physical, but that's not the root of the abuse or really the main problem. The main problem is that he's a narcissistic, manipulative, and well, not healthy partner. But he also comes off to the audience as having a bit of a soft side and being a little bit of a sympathetic character, and you really don't see how manipulative he's being until later on in the book, which really mirrors real life experiences where if you're in a situation like Grace's, you're not going to see immediately off the bat that this dude is an abuser. You're going to see the side he projects to the world. The other thing that really impacted me about this book is that there are a few scenes with her parents. She has a mother and then a stepfather, and both have issues of their own. And there's one scene in this book with her mother. It's like a 5-page scene. I'm pretty sure if you just read this book, you would barely notice it. And it was something that literally has happened to me. Like, really just down to the dialogue was something that happened to me in my childhood. While Grace's mom is trying, she's really not always able to be there for Grace, and you know, not always there emotionally, and sometimes can be really volatile because she's dealing with her own shit. But that does come off to her daughter, and it makes her daughter feel like she's kind of the only person who's there for herself, and that's why it's so easy for Gavin to become the only person who's there for her and to isolate her because she doesn't really trust other people. She's struggling with that, and that was so amazing to actually see on page and see the emotion that Grace was feeling, because I just related so deeply to a lot of stuff in this book. It's a really powerful book. It is really hard to read. It is gorgeous. You should definitely read it. I love the way it talks about emotional abuse. It really prioritizes Grace's feeling unsafe and Grace's feeling manipulated in this relationship. It really prioritizes how Grace feels unsafe in this relationship. It discusses the connection between feeling unloved by your parents and maybe getting into an abusive relationship of your own without demonizing the character who was in a bad home situation. This book meant everything to me. It was so good. The other thing that I really like about this book is that though there is a little hint of a romance with someone else, the main aspect of the book towards Grace getting out is her 2 best friends. She's in this like squad with one of her best friends who's a lesbian and is just really funny and kind of like, you know how sometimes you read when straight people write their gay characters and you're like, a straight person wrote this. I read this and I was like, you know, I could actually, I totally am her friend. And then her other friend is a very like Catholic, school-oriented friend, and they're both just so supportive and there for Grace, and I love their friend dynamic. It's so great. I love the characters. It's such a good and underrated book. It deserves all of the hype in the world. The next book I want to talk about is one I actually read this year, and it's just been going really under the radar, but it just released. And it's called Final Draft by Riley Redgate. Noteworthy by Riley Redgate, which is a book about an a cappella group and a girl dressing up as a boy to kind of be in that group. Got a lot of hype last year, but as someone who has read both, this to me is gold standard. Noteworthy was a much more funny book, and then there were a few discussions woven in of like the rights of trans people and the fact that women who are altos don't really get a lot of recognition, and that, you know, there were some important messages, but it was mostly a fun book. This is not mostly a fun book. This is a book about a girl who is a writer, and when her teacher gets ill, she has a Pulitzer Prize award-winning author come to her school and essentially be her teacher. And this author decides that she's going to fail basically everyone in the class and then make that their final grade for the year. Whatever grade they get on their current writing assignment is their final grade for the year. Oh, Layla, the main character, has been in sort of her own bubble, and she's now forced into this world where she feels like she has to have her own experiences and put those into her writing and be edgier and be more out there. It's a gorgeous book. It talks about so many different things. The main character is pansexual, she is plus-sized, she is Ecuadorian and also biracial, and she's so well written. I love Layla so much. Oh my god, Layla is one of my favorite narrators of the year, and she also has anxiety, and there's a lot of discussion of that. All of the discussions are kind of woven into the book, and even if they only come up once, you feel them in how they affect her character and how they affect how she views the world, how she views other people. It's gorgeous. I am so happy with everything this book did. There's a really major friendship element. There's a lot of discussion of how people can pressure you and how that can feel bad to you, but also push you into the right direction, but also feel bad. So much discussion of high school culture and how we often push ourselves towards college. A lot of discussion of just school pressure in high schools in general, which, as someone who was a junior when I read this book and literally doing college tours, it was uncomfortably close to home. But the other main thing about this book that I'm always screaming about is there is a romance, and it's not even a major element of the book. Like, it's not the main plot point at all, but it's a romance between Layla and one of her best friends who is a Korean lesbian, and it is amazing. I feel like it's a really hard talent in a contemporary book to come up with a romance where the two people are shipping the two characters, but also not knowing whether they're actually going to get together. And I got into this book, and she had me begging for this romance to happen before I even knew it would happen. I kept hoping that Hannah and Layla were going to be the endgame couple, and I wasn't sure if they were going to be. I had no evidence whatsoever that they were going to be, and at like 45%, I was like, is this actually happening? Is this actually going to happen? And then it did! I was screaming so hard. Layla is the best. I will reread this so many times. It is very short. It's only like 250 pages, but it is super impactful, super character-driven, very world-like in that I feel like it really represents the real world in a way a lot of contemporary doesn't. It's perfect. I would die for this book. Please read it. The third and final book I'm going to be talking about today is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I'm going to read the quote from The Flap just to describe this book to you. You probably think that Aled Lest and I are going to fall in love or something, since he's a boy and I'm a girl. I just wanted to say, we don't. This gets marketed a lot as a romance between Aled and Francis because it gets shelved in the romance section, which is so fucking confusing to me. It's actually not a romance between them. It's not. But it is a story in which kind of one of the main points is their friendship. This is a book about a girl, Frances, who is really feeling pressured in her own life and really pushing herself towards college, and then a boy, Aled, who is kind of focusing on his own radio show, which he runs. So Frances and Aled end up becoming best friends and working on Radio Silence, which is the show, together. But along the way, they kind of figure out that they're both having a lot of problems in their own life. And it's sort of about them dealing with it through their friendship with each other and through relationships with other people. This book is so emotionally cathartic, I think is the main word I'd use to describe it. So much of what Frances feels on page is really relatable, and I think will be to anyone who's in high school. It feels so authentically high school. I don't know if anyone has ever read a lot of YA before them where you're like, huh, a 40-year-old wrote that and they don't remember anything about high school. This gets high school. Being unpopular in high school is not what a lot of literature would have you believe, where you're like totally alone and like no one will talk to you. I'm like, It's just you don't feel as connected to other people at your school, or you struggle with feeling left out by like the popular groups, which are a thing. And I feel like this book really got that, partially because Alice Oseman is like a 21-year-old. But it's also really well written. There is so much important messaging in here. It made me sob. The main squad that forms at the end of the group is so good. I love how the entire book is about friendship. Like there is actually one kind of side romance, but the main story arc of the book is Francis and Aled becoming best friends and their friendship. That's the main point for sure. And then there's the main character, Frances, doesn't even have a romance plot, although it's implied that maybe she'll have one later with like another girl that she knows. And it's perfect. It's perfect. It's so good. I'm in love with this. I love it so much. Frances is also biracial, bisexual, and Ethiopian, and then Aled is gay and demisexual. There are several other queer lead characters. Actually, I think every single other one of the lead characters is queer. It's a very queer book. We love it. I would die for this book. I want to reread it every day. It made me cry in the best way. Highly recommended. And yeah, all three of these books were amazing. I gave them all 5 stars, but there are so many other books I could recommend you. If you want to check out some of my other recommendations, my Goodreads channel. My Goodreads channel? What the fuck? Will be linked down below. My Goodreads account will be linked down below, and so will my Twitter and my blog. Please go to those for all the recs you can find. And yeah, I hope you guys are all having a great day. Bye!